Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revolution, a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready, we're not gonna sit back.
Welcome back to more Live from the Heartland for the week of June 17th. And once again, this is number 157 since the beginning of the pandemic. It is the first show of our fourth year since we started doing it by Zoom. And all of you people who watch the show or listen to the show know that we love music, we love art, we love sport. And we believe that all of these things, music, art, sport, many more things, can help move people in a positive direction toward all of us working to make the world a better place. So today, it gives me a lot of pleasure to bring on someone that's going to tell us a little bit about an organization called Genesis at the Crossroads. We're going to learn a little bit about the organization, what they're doing, and an upcoming concert. It gives me great pleasure to bring on Wendy Sternberg, who is the founder, the executive and artistic director of Genesis at the Crossroads. Hello to you.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. It's wonderful to be here, and it's nice to be the first person leading the fourth year of really important programming.
Right on. And we want to thank Lynn Orman, our music producer, and I'm just going to call her producer, because she brings us great guests, and she's pretty excited about having you come on. Let's start off. I understand you are Chicago-based. I think you're over on Burling. In the old days, I could tell you stories about around that address that I have for you, but that's another story. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Genesis at the Crossroads, what it is, what it does?
Yeah, thank you. Genesis at the Crossroads is a 23-year-old organization working at an intersection of social justice, education, and art to build peaceful communities which foster healing. And we've been doing this since 1999, as I mentioned, 23 years. Started at a time when it feels like the world was so different, but we keep having these disruptions that make us feel like the whole world is anew. And I think we either have an opportunity to find ways to bring us together, or we're all going to go down. And so Genesis at the Crossroads is all about creating programs and spaces and models and all different ways of bringing people together to find our common humanity and to not just bring our differences into the same room, but to celebrate them and know that there's wisdom in that diversity. And when we bring that to bear on all different issues, we can find tremendous ways to navigate the greatest challenges of our time. The areas that we work in, which are not siloed or vertical, they're all integrated, are arts and peace building, mostly music and peace building, leadership and peace building education, and doing work in social impact business development or humanitarian impact, but not in areas of water and medicine and housing and food.
Well, how did you get the name? And then what led you to start this organization? What were you doing at that time?
So I am a physician by training. I'm still a physician. I practiced for over 20 years at the front line of medicine. And I think that healing is a through line, well, for everything in my life, but certainly for Genesis at the Crossroads. And where the name comes from is an interesting story. So I had the profound privilege of spending 6 months on the Malabar coast in India and doing medical work in the south of India, in a place that I had written about when I was a young teenager, actually for my bat mitzvah of all things. And this was a community that I had explored, how they ended up in India. And it was this incredible cross-cultural crossroads, if you will. And on the Malabar coast, when I was visiting, I was meeting some of the fishermen with the Chinese fishing nets that were bringing in fish. It was a place where the Dutch had been. It was the place where the Maharaja had given the Jewish community the charter to have a synagogue back in the 3rd century. And it was where the spice trade was for the Arabian Peninsula coming to India. And I had this I have a dance background. I have a lot of arts in my family, and I have done a lot of arts. And I was watching the fishermen bring in the nets and thinking, wow, this is just like a dance. And I went up to them, couldn't speak Malayalam, and motioned, I would like you to teach me how to bring in the nets. And I came back from, this experience of literally this dance movement, this multicultural world, this blending of all cultures where trade occurred and people bumped up against cultures and all different aspects of humanity. And it was not necessarily the richest in money, but in terms of human riches, was so incredible. And I came back from this and started working on creating an organization that was bringing people together through all the things I mentioned. And I thought, well, there's something about this meeting at this intersection. But intersection feels like a traffic light. It feels like where you stop or start. And I wanted something more than that intersection. I wanted, we talk about Morocco being a crossroads and a cultural crossroads. And there is a little something biblical about a crossroads, but Genesis is a-religious and apolitical. So it wasn't about that kind of crossroads. And then there's something that happens when people meet and there's an exchange, and it's this moment in time when something arises. So something that comes from nothing is a nod to this idea of generative or Genesis. So something begins anew, and it's often in a declarative statement. So that's where the name comes from.
Oh, that's a good story. I like that. And I love the crossovers. I love the crossing, where people meet, borders, migration. That's one reason I love Chicago, despite all of the, people saying it's the most racist and segregated city. We clearly have a lot to do, but it's also a place where all kind of people cross over, mix together in all kind of ways and build some new things. I'm also reminded of in my own past of writing a piece called Time to Heal. And in that, I encourage a politics of affirmation, of people affirming the good in all different things and bringing those things together. Enough of that. You got a number of programs coming up. And one of the reasons Lynn wanted you to come on, because you have an event called Sounds of Healing. And I know you're taking it to DC, but you're also going to be right here in Chicago on June 22nd at Francis Parker School in the Diane and David B. Heller Auditorium, 4:30 to 6:30. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that event and what it's going to do and who's going to be in it and what people might expect to see and how they get the tickets?
Sure. Yes, I'm delighted to share this program with everyone who's listening and with you, Michael, as well. So Sounds of Healing was created during the pandemic, and it was meant to be an in-person program. Then we pivoted, like many other organizations, to do a virtual program. So we worked with 37 people, 33 of whom were artists from all over the world in 17 countries, navigating every imaginable barrier you can think of. So geographic and race and ethnicity and culture and language and time zones and the whole 9 yards. And what was interesting, it's hard to remember the early stages of the pandemic, except for the things that were shocking. But what we forget is that there were phases of it where America was in lockdown, but other parts of the world were not. So actually, for Sounds of Healing, our production team was in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And they were able to go into studios and record music and not wear a mask because they hadn't been hit hard with the pandemic. And as the pandemic traveled around the world, some of our artists were more isolated than others and couldn't even go to a recording studio. So one of our artists actually found the best place for sound was in her closet. And she pulled out all the clothes, went in her closet, and with her iPhone recorded the parts of her piece. And I'm actually delighted to say that She was one of the young people in the program that scored a song called Es Tiempo de Sanar, which means it's time to heal in Spanish. And she scored the piece and is one of the vocalists performing in it. So this is a collaboration of our Genesis World Music Ensemble called Saffron Caravan. They're a group of professional artists. The group was founded in 2007. And the larger group is 9 ensemble members, and they are from Iran, Afghanistan, Cuba, Morocco, India, the Middle East, Brazil, Venezuela, and Europe. And this particular group that we're touring is 4 musicians from Saffron Caravan, plus a bassist who's from Chicago. And I can share their names in a moment. And then we collaborated with our professional world music ensemble with young graduates of a leadership peace-building education that Genesis runs over the summer called the Genesis Academy Summer Institute. And the youth that participate in the program are not necessarily musicians by trade. These are high school students, 15 to 19, and inevitably they are creative. Because the program has an artistic thread through it, and some of them are gifted in music and creative writing. So we had 7 students participate from Afghanistan, the Congo, Chicago, Pakistan, Venezuela, and Bogota, Colombia. And we are delighted to be presenting work in Sounds of Healing it's not new right now, but it was new for this program when we created Sounds of Healing. And we did the world premiere on Zoom, sharing it with, I think we reached 33 countries or 34 countries, including Iran, if you can imagine that. So it's spread around the world. We have a map on our Instagram page that shows the pinpoints of where people heard the program. And that was on December 19th, 2020, and we re-aired it in May of 2021. And then we moved into the live in-person programs. And our idea was to put healing into the universe. So we worked with the Adler Planetarium as the very first venue for the world premiere. And it was a really magical program. And now we're in the midst of the world tour, as you mentioned.
You got this tour. You're going to be in Chicago. You're also in DC. Where else are you going to take it?
So we're in DC performing for the U.S. Congress on Capitol Hill on June 21st, which is the day before we come to Chicago again. And then we will be going off the coast of Madagascar to a small island nation state called Mauritius in December of this year. And we're working on a very interesting program on music and healing, looking at climate change and thinking about that for small island states that if we don't work quickly enough to heal our planet, we'll be underwater. And then from there, the following year, we're going to Europe, and we'll be in Berlin, Germany, and Normandy, France. And Normandy, France is a big program that's an artist in residency program and will be for the 80th anniversary celebrations of D-Day. So I'm very proud of that.
You've got how many people going on this tour? 7?
We have 10 people plus myself.
And how many kids from Chicago or people from Chicago? There's a bass player, anyone else?
Well, we have a bass player. We have Catherine Davis, who's a guest artist. I want to introduce, you had asked me who's in the program, so I want to go through that.
Do it.
And we have a few people from Chicago, and we have a few people who lived in Chicago and now live in other places. So in Saffron Caravan is Baji Assad, who's Lebanese Brazilian, and she's in Sao Paulo and part of the time also in Chicago. We have Aaron Ben Susan, who's Moroccan, from Essaouira, and he is from a dynastic family of people who learn the liturgical music, rabbis from Casablanca and all over Morocco. So we bring in the Crossroads, that is the original Crossroads of thousands of years, Morocco. We have Javier Saume Matse, who's our percussionist from Venezuela, and he used to live in Chicago. He's now in Albuquerque. Then we have Haitham Safia, who is Middle Eastern European, and he splits his time between the Galilee and the Netherlands. And unfortunately, he will not physically be with us, but he did a beautiful oud collaboration with Stacy Keach, the actor Stacy Keach, reading Alberto Rios's poem called A House Called Tomorrow. And Haitham did an oud improvisation to this poem. And we had that in the virtual program. And because Haitham cannot be with us, neither can Stacy Keach, we're actually showing the Zoom call with that music. So we still have our oud virtuoso with us. And then we have Jack Zara, who's from Chicago. He's our bassist. And we have two guest artists who are joining us. Catherine Davis, who's a blues and jazz vocalist from Chicago, just was honored by our mayor at the Blues Fest a few days ago. And we have Tony Milano, who is a keyboardist who is also from Chicago, but went to the West Coast, but is coming back to Chicago quite a lot. And then we have the students from our Genesis Academy Summer Institute. And there's a couple less of them. Sophia Simpkins from Chicago is not going to be with us. And Azar from Afghanistan and Patrick from the Congo, who also lived in Chicago, will not be with us. But the ones who will be are Farhan from Pakistan, from Islamabad, and Rohina Madni, who is from Karachi. And Rohina was in the very first Genesis Academy Summer Institute in 2015, and Farhan was in the second one. And then we have two students from Venezuela who are no longer students, they're all adults now. And that is Diego Madriz, who's from Venezuela, finishing up his undergraduate degree, who's a human rights activist in Venezuela. And we have Andrea Valentina Perez, who left Venezuela to live in Spain, a lot safer. And she is the person who, as I mentioned before, had scored Es Tiempo de Sonar with some of our professional musicians and also is performing in it.
Wendy, I saw a photo while doing a little research before you came on of a number of kids laying down on the ground in a peace symbol. And I'm wondering, where is that picture from and what was it about? Is it from your Summer Institute? Or
yes.
And where does the Summer Institute take place? And is that going on now, even though it's not too warm outside?
So the Summer Institute is a program that occurs in July and August. It got put on hold because of the pandemic, but we started it in 2014 and had the first cohort in 2015. And we have applicants, actually by the fourth year of the program, we were having applicants from 30-something countries, now have 37 countries submitting applications. It's an invitation-only program. And so it has to be through some network of people who are familiar with Genesis at the Crossroads. And it is a summer program that was a proof of concept for a larger program we were doing that was a boarding school for global leadership with a campus peace hub surrounding it. And COVID made the boarding school not a possibility.
Right.
And so the Peace Hub still exists as an entity. And the Summer Institute, we cherry pick next generation youth talent from all over the world, ages 15 to 19. We bring them to Chicago, and they are in 4 curricular areas that they work in during the time that they're here. And that is arts and peace building, heroes and human rights, environmental sustainability, and peace journalism. So you asked about that photo, and that photo was taken in 2017. We work with WBEZ, our NPR station here in Chicago, and they are part of the Peace Journalism program. And we did a whole unit on the power of civic dialogue and public radio. And we were outside of the WBEZ studio. It was this glorious day, not a cloud in the sky, beautiful, beautiful blue sky. And there was some other group that was doing some dance routine on the lower level down from WBEZ, and I went up to the higher level and asked them to create a peace symbol with their bodies, and I took that picture. And I love that picture.
You know, we'll run out of time soon, so I'm going to throw this at you. If you're talking to younger people or anybody, what are your what recommendations or suggestions or methods for bringing about more healing and peace in the world? What can people do? I mean, it should become a major theme, obviously, in people's lives. Certainly necessary. Your thoughts, your recommendations, your advice to the masses of listeners and viewers out there who want to get involved.
I think the most important thing I would say to a young person is go get displaced. Go places that rearrange your molecules, that take the things that are your quote unquote truths in your life and upend some of them, make you question them, sometimes in service of making your sensibilities stronger about those things, but to open up your worldview, to listen to other people's perspectives that are as radically different from your own as you can find, and to understand that if you surround yourself with people that are always of the same opinion of that you hold, we can never fix anything when we do that. We have to find ways to come together that honor our collective humanity and that help us understand it's not that we need to put a check in a box on diversity and inclusion and all these other things. This is not tokenism. We don't have time for tokenism. We need to have authentic conversations where we're sharing ourselves and our communities. And when we do that and when we're known, conflict not only lessens, it can disappear. And young people have agency to do this if they so choose to put themselves in the mix and need to have their voices expressed. And if you have intelligence and a good heart, it is a shame if you don't put it into the world.
No, I like all that. And it reminds me of, I just came out with a book called Crossing Borders, which regular listeners or viewers have heard me ramble on about. But for me, when I first crossed the border into Mexico in 1962 on a motorcycle, my worldview changed. I mean, it just was very different. And as an organizer for many years, trying to recruit people to leave school and go out and do good in the world, I would say to them, it's important to put yourself in a certain place, in a certain position that forces you to go through changes. And it sounds like you're doing that. How about one more time giving us a little pitch for the Thursday event, because there are tickets available and it's right here, not too far from where we're sitting, both of us are right now, and a lot of people should go hear it, see it.
Sounds of Healing is a multicultural experience that will inspire our audience members to think about healing in our present day context. What does it mean to us as individuals? What does it mean to us sitting together in an auditorium with people from different communities coming together? What does it mean for our violent city of Chicago that's having a lot of issues and a lot of divisions, which are frankly iconic for our country and our world, where we are having more division than coming together. So it's inviting our audience to be a part of this conversation for healing and for building peace in the world.
Wendy Sternberg of Genesis at the Crossroads, it's really an honor and a pleasure to meet you. And I'm really looking forward to following your organization, meeting you, talking it up a little bit, because I think there's stuff we could do together.
Yeah, thank you, Mike.
We'll look forward to really to meeting you, and good luck with this. And I hope to make it to the concert on June 22nd at Francis Parker School here in Chicago.